Today we're talking about 6 things that Apple did not bring up about this generation's iPhones on stage. Still updates, still things that I think maybe some people should be aware of. Some are big changes, some are small. Either way, if it wasn't brought up on stage, it'll be brought up in today's video, so let's begin. First things first, I think it's completely mind-boggling that they didn't want to bring up the new U1 chip that is included in this year's iPhones. That's right, there's a new ultra-wideband chip that is implemented into this iPhone so that it can be more spatially aware of other iOS devices or other devices with the U1 chip, which we did hear talked about, and I covered it in some of my last-minute recap videos of the R1 chip as it was originally codenamed. I guess they used the letter R to throw off the letter U, but this chip is going to allow the iPhone to be more easily located from the Find My app, and even though it wasn't announced at the Apple keynote, I still believe the Apple Tile Tracker devices are in development, could be unveiled as soon as next month, and those things are also going to be using the U1 chip. I imagine future generation of AirPods could even implement this feature as well, and Apple even hints at it at their website. You can see at the bottom of the page they have about the U1 chip, they say this is just the beginning. The first primary thing it can do is if you have a lot of different devices in one area and you want to prioritize one device for airdropping over the rest, you can literally just point your iPhone at another one, and using the U1 chip ultra-wideband technology, it will be able to communicate and prioritize that device that you want to share to, making sharing photos and videos even faster than it was before. So, brand new silicon custom chip that they just decided they didn't want to bring up in this event. Maybe they didn't want to bring it up because they want to save all the U1 chip talk for perhaps next month's keynote where they'll actually unveil the Tile Tracker, but yeah, it's a pretty big update in my opinion. Second thing that I think was really interesting, also something that was leaked before the iPhone event actually happened, but Apple decided not to really bring it up on stage, is the ultra-wide camera on both the iPhone 11 and the 11 Pro allows you to uncrop an image, kind of zoom out after you've already taken a photo in post. For those of you who may take a picture of a friend or family member, and maybe someone got cut off on accident, you'll be able to hit edit, and using the crop feature, zoom out and use a little bit of that data collected from the ultra-wide lens, which is always working in the background, even if you don't necessarily need it. So Apple's able to keep the file sizes for this small, but have a little bit more buffer zone, so if you take a picture and something accidentally got cut off in post, you'll be able to fix it. We know this from people who are somehow experimenting and testing with the iPhone 11 already. There's just random people out there in the world who have it already and they're testing it. People in the press that probably aren't supposed to be talking about it, but at the same time they kind of are. Showcased this by showing off the kind of auto crop function in the Photos app, but yeah, Apple didn't really showcase that feature, though it is one you should expect in this year's iPhones, which I think is really cool. Being able to edit and post, and this is a huge reason as to why the lenses on the iPhone Pro had to be equal distant from each other. Apple, more so than other companies who have triple cameras on the back that just say, hey, you got 3 lenses to choose from, wanted to make sure that all these 3 lenses were very close together so that they could stitch the photos and videos as one, have them color calibrated at the factory and all that, so that implementing pictures and videos between all these 3 lenses is going to be easier and more optimized than any other triple camera setup out there. So that's why it has to look so weird. Third thing Apple did not bring up on stage, and this is no surprise because Apple usually doesn't talk about this with their iPhones. From several very reliable leakers, we have detailed that the iPhone Pro models, the ones with the new OLED displays, are rocking with 6 gigabytes of RAM. That's the highest amount of RAM we've ever had on an iPhone. And granted, I know why Apple doesn't like talking about it because iOS RAM management is really good, and you don't really have to have a bunch of RAM in order for apps to stay open and for you to continue using the phone normally. This is something more Android users compare about because Android RAM management is not so great, so having a lot of RAM is typically something sought out for, if not required for Android devices. So I guess Apple didn't want to draw much attention to that, but still, there has never been an iPhone with 6 gigs of RAM before. There was a little bit of confusion, I'll give you that, because some people were doing Geekbench tests on the unreleased iPhones and saying that in Geekbench it only showed 4 gigabytes of RAM, but both OnLeaks and Bloomberg and many others have said that that's essentially how iOS treats an unsupported third-party app. It doesn't give them full RAM management access because obviously the iPhone 11 Pro is not out yet. So third-party apps that have not been updated to support the new iPhones, they obviously don't have complete access to the device. But yes, on both sizes, the 11 Pro and 11 Pro Max, you're getting 6 gigabytes of RAM, which I don't think is going to make a huge difference in my day-to-day use because me, like most users, is switching between maybe 4 to 5 apps maximum throughout the day, and usually iOS does a pretty good job of keeping keeping them open in the background, so may make a little bit of a difference, but yeah, that's just kind of a spec upgrade that not that many people were aware of. Regular iPhone 11 still rocking 4 gigs of RAM though. Number 4 is also a weird one, because bizarrely, when the iPhones were announced, I saw a lot of people surprised and upset that they didn't have bilateral wireless charging, even though we still have lots and lots of Galaxy S10 and Note 10 users out there that I'm pretty much any one of them you could ask, and they will tell you bilateral wireless charging is not that useful of a feature. When I found out it was scrapped, I didn't really care at all, because I had my Galaxy S10, and the number of times that it was actually practical and useful to charge another device with my phone was far and few between. It's really just an interesting gimmicky feature, but at the end of the day, AirPods can last 2 to 3 days without being charged, whereas your iPhone is something you kind of want to charge at the end of every single day because it needs it. So the circumstances of your iPhone being 100% juiced up, but your AirPods needing a charge is just not a common one, so I totally get why Apple didn't want to include it. However, what wasn't talked about on stage is that there's several leakers out there saying that the bilateral wireless charging hardware is actually embedded into the iPhone 11 Pro, but it is software disabled for now, and this really confuses me. I know this may fall into the realm of not something that wasn't announced, but more so something that's not confirmed yet, but we're getting more and more people confirming it, as there are people out in the world using the iPhone 11 and 11 Pro early, and they're confirming that the bilateral wireless charging hardware is embedded in all these phones, but Apple just didn't want to talk about it and has its software locked so that no one really can access it right now. That's quite bizarre, and it doesn't sound like Apple to me, because I feel like if Apple wanted to include bilateral wireless charging and they were willing to put it in mass production so that every single phone had that feature, why would they at the last minute go, you know what, we don't think it's very good, let's not bring it up? That's something that would come up before mass production began, so I kind of have doubts about that, but at the same time, lots of people coming forward with it and confirming, hey, the hardware's in there, it's just not being activated right now, so that could make for a very interesting software update later in the year if Apple just said, hey, iOS 14 is coming, and by the way, when iOS 14 comes out, all of your phones will now have bilateral wireless charging. Kind of weird that that's now a possibility, since so many people are saying it does have the hardware, but obviously once the phone is officially out and we can get some iFixit teardowns, we'll see the actual answers. But at this point, looking like a very much likely hidden feature that cannot be accessed for the time being. Maybe someone will jailbreak it to turn on. Thing number 5 they didn't bring up on stage was not a huge feature. It's something we've seen on the Galaxy Note 10, but it's audio zoom. So when you're zooming in on the iPhone 11 Pro lens, it's going to heighten the microphone sensitivity to the area that you're pointing the phone at, so that when you zoom in on something, it'll be a bit more sound clear from that microphone. This is not an original feature, but it's something I feel like a lot of people didn't know about. So yeah, zooming in on the iPhone camera will allow the microphone to enhance that audio so you can hear whatever you're pointing at a little bit better. All right, and the 6th and final thing that Apple didn't bring up, rightfully so, because Apple always prides themselves on how thin and light their devices are. These next generation iPhones, both the 11 and the 11 Pro, are some of the heaviest iPhones Apple has ever made, particularly the 11 Pro Max, of course, which the XS Max was closer to 7 ounces in weight. The Pro Max is just barely under 8 ounces, so it's gotten heavier than last year, probably because of that triple camera, but also the body itself has gotten just ever so slightly thicker and even a little bit wider and taller, probably not to the extent that anyone will be able to notice. If you hold an iPhone 11 Pro Max right next to a XS Max, you'll probably think they're the exact same size, but if you compare the tech specs on the website, you will see that the Pro Max is a little bit heavier and a little bit taller and a little bit thicker and a little bit wider. But like I said, I doubt you'll notice, but I just want it to be brought up because there's a lot of people out there that say, why doesn't Apple just make the iPhones thicker so that they can have better battery lives? You don't have to say that anymore because they've been doing it for a while, actually. If you compare previous generation iPhones, they've consistently been getting thicker ever since the iPhone 6, and this year is no exception. They expanded the battery life of the XS Max by 5 hours with the Pro Max, and that did include making the device thicker, making it a little bit taller and bulkier so that we can have more battery throughout the day, which I'm happy about. I kind of like having a heavy phone in my pocket, especially if it means my battery life can last a bit longer. So totally fine with that, but it's something they don't talk about on stage, obviously, because it probably doesn't sound very good in marketing. Hey, these iPhones are the heaviest ones ever! Yeah, don't bring that up. But some of you may like it, so there's the info. Anywho, that's the 6 biggest things I think weren't talked about on stage. I'm sure there may be some stuff I'm missing, but you'll be able to find those elsewhere. And if you want to talk more about the features I listed today, feel free to hit me up over on Twitter or join our Discord. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I'll see you guys in the next one.